Hello and welcome to the Emmy Awards. I'm your host, Emmy Cardinale, and this is my podcast where I talk about I've been watching or rewatching normally once a week. If this is the first episode of mine that you stumble upon and you enjoy it, please feel free to follow me wherever you listen to podcasts so you can get notified when I upload a new episode. Like and subscribe if you're listening to this on YouTube, all that good stuff. Honestly, even just listening means more to me than I can express. I have a few introductory disclaimer stuff that I'm going to ramble about at the beginning. But if you do not care about that, feel free to skip to when the recap starts. Timestamps will be in the description. So first, I am recording in a different place. I'm recording from my bed. And the reason I'm doing that is there are a few reasons. One, I accidentally skipped a week of the podcast because I've been struggling mentally. You know, like those depression commercials where they're like, you can tell you're depressed because you're not finding joy in the things that normally bring you joy. I have clinical depression and I simply wasn't finding joy in the things that normally bring me joy, including this podcast. I also have a full-time job. My full-time job also happens to be working for the news. I design newspapers for a living. So I was just struggling and I couldn't bring myself to get my notes ready for the podcast, to record, et cetera, et cetera. And the other reason I'm recording from my bed is because I did attempt to record this yesterday and I did not realize until I went to edit it that I was having audio issues. I feel like this is happening to me like every week. I've tested like 10 times that the audio was working. This podcast episode, as the title suggests, is going to be me wrapping up my coverage for the Percy Jackson series. Next episode, I do not know when that will go out. Honestly, I kind of want to try to like get another podcast episode out within this week because I fell behind last week, and in my brain I'm like, if I do 2 episodes a week then I didn't really skip a week, but no promises because again, this is a hobby and I'm trying not to overextend myself in something that should be fun. Like, as much as I do, I get really hard on myself, and like that doesn't help when I'm already in like a depressive state. I get really hard on myself about how the podcast is a flop. And then I get mad at myself for being mad at myself because I'm like, I mean, this is a hobby. It's nobody needs to watch you're doing it for fun. But I think it's just hard because it's like, not that I thought that I would be like a full-time podcaster, but it is just kind of like sad sometimes that I've been working on this podcast for like almost 4 years. It'll be 4 years on Valentine's Day. And like it's made little moves. It's made little moves. And so I just, all of these things, I get really hard on myself. So my gut instinct is like, I'll get another episode out this week too, after this one. So it's 2 episodes a week, so I didn't even really skip a week. But if I don't do that, no promises. I'm trying to just have fun with this again. But because I fell behind, next episode is going to be catching up on the Traitors, probably episodes 4 through 8, because I do not anticipate recording before episode 8 goes live. And once I've caught up on the Traitors, my episode after that, I'm going to be catching up on the Pit. And then I'm going to try to do every week going forward a Pit Traitors recap. Like, half the episode will be about the Traitors, half the episode will be about the Pit. That is my goal for the next few weeks. I do also really want to talk about Tell Me Lies, but I think I'll save that for like a big deep dive at the end of the show, perhaps. I also want to cover School Spirits, but I did a deep dive for season 2, so I will probably do a deep dive format for that. I did last year start prepping a Yellow Jackets deep dive that never came to fruition. So if I do a School Spirits deep dive, I will finish the Yellow Jackets one first. But alas, all of those disclaimers. Next podcast episode will be catching up on the Traitors. Then after that, I'll catch up on the Pit season 2, and then I'll try to be recapping in real time again. But I haven't really been doing that this year at all because life. So apologies for all those disclaimers. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. The place where I last left you when recapping Percy Jackson, they had gotten the fleece, but then Luke got the fleece and Annabeth, and he got away, right? Okay, she got away. She got away. But it's actually Luke. Luke got away. But it ended with Percy being like, we'll get them back, and the Hippo Campfire taking them there, right? Okay, so we open with a flashback of Grover, Thalia, Annabeth, and Luke arriving to Camp Half-Blood all those years ago. There's a flash and then she's a tree. This is meant to be Annabeth's recollection of it, right? Because we get this scene a few times and then ultimately we see the in-depth scene of like what actually happened. And this is meant to be Annabeth's recollection. So from Annabeth's recollection, they get there and then she didn't see that like what happened. The next morning, Chiron is explaining that Thalia made the ultimate sacrifice. Now her spirit will protect them like she protected the one she loved. Luke asks what that means, and Chiron says that she defeated her assailants at the expense of her own life. So Zeus turned her into the tree. Luke is upset. He's like, where's Thalia? Chiron's like, I literally just explained this to you. She's a tree now. Catch up. He doesn't say that, but like, I am Luke's number one hater. Actually, that's not true. Well, no. I'm Allison Sims' number one hater. Luke, I'm probably not his number one hater, but I'm up there. But anyways, Annabeth goes up to the tree. She hears Thalia's voice. There's a light from the tree, and Annabeth wakes up from her dream. This is something they do a lot with dreams in the show. It's like a flash of light will like wake them or like whatever. As she's waking up, she hears Thalia's voice saying, we take care of our own. She's on the Princess Andromeda, tied to a bed. The fleece is on top of her like a blanket. She hears footsteps and pretends to be asleep. And then Allison Sims, my op, I hate her, comes and she grabs the fleece. And then we see the hippocampi in the water. They're on Long Island. And it's kind of like, oh, so we as the audience understand that Grover, Tyson, and like they're here now. The hippocampi have dropped them off here. And then we see a half-blood whose name is Aiden, but I don't believe we knew his name yet. He is talking to a mortal about a ship that needs moving. I imagine the Princess Andromeda. It's not supposed to be here. And then he hears Allison Sims calling for him. It's like, his name's Aiden. This is how we find out his name's Aiden. And says Luke is going to be pissed, calls him to this bathroom. Aiden walks into the bathroom or maybe it's like a storage. I don't know. In my brain, it was like a public restroom on this pier, but it doesn't matter. But anyways, he walks into this room and Clarice, Tyson, Grover, and Percy are there. Clarice pins him to the wall to interrogate him. And Tyson says sorry in Allison's voice. So we as the audience can clock that obviously the voice that Aiden heard was Tyson pretending to be Allison. He says he's a big fan of Percy Jackson. Me too. Percy's a celebrity. Percy is a celebrity in this world, and I love that for him. I love Percy Jackson like Percy Jackson, right? He likes, he's like, I'm a big fan of you, the person. I like Percy Jackson, the franchise, the brand. He says that they should go somewhere to talk, and Clarice is like, lose the charm, speak, Aphrodite boy. And side note, I went on this whole tangent in my recording yesterday about how much I love CharmSpeak as a tool in the series. And I like this introduction of it because I feel like it's one of the cooler things that the Aphrodite cabin does. And I've been rereading the Heroes of Olympus, and it's actually so funny because when I read the books, I was like 10, I don't know. I read them when they came out, the Heroes of Olympus. And naturally I was a child. And because I was a child, I genuinely really liked Piper. Like Piper really resonated with me because I read this book, the series, when I was going through a similar, I'm not like other girls' phase, you know? And I understand now why as an adult she pisses people off. But like the thing is, I still read it and I'm like, she's a kid. So it's like, it doesn't bother me because I'm like, whatever. And I think I always liked the fact that like the Aphrodite cabin was not one that I particularly resonated with reading the original series. I liked the way that Piper was like not like the typical Aphrodite kid, but then obviously came into her own and like learned to appreciate the parts about being an Aphrodite kid that resonated with her, but like also rejected maybe the toxic parts of being an Aphrodite kid because they're just objectively are, okay? Like a rule of being like a rite of passage is that you have to break somebody's heart. One of my favorite Persephone moments literally ever is in a Piper chapter. I don't remember what book this is in. I have it bookmarked like in the book, but I don't remember what book it is. But there's a moment where Percy and Annabeth have a very nice moment, and in like it's from Piper's perspective, and she talks about how she thinks that this should be the rite of passage for children of Aphrodite, not breaking somebody's heart, like making somebody's heart whole. And it was just so beautiful, and it's one of my favorite Persephone moments. And I like Piper. And all that to say, I really love charm speak. I find it to be one of the most fascinating powers. I would love to be a charm speaker. I would convince everybody to listen to my podcast. But anyways, I like this introduction, and I like the fact that then you're able to connect the fact that he is persuading the mortal about the ship because he's charm speaking this mortal earlier in the episode. Anyways, Clarice tells him to lose the charm speak or lose his teeth. And then Percy asks where Annabeth is. They tie him up. They get Kronos' gold room key from him. And then Clarice grabs it from Percy, and he's like, what are you doing? And she's like, the fleece is in Luke's room. I'm going there. And Percy's like, we need to get Annabeth first. And she says, no. Clearly, they have different priorities. And Clarice says they're doing it her way. Grover comes in then, because he stepped away. He couldn't get an Iris message to camp. Iris didn't accept his offering. The whole network is down. Something's wrong. Something bad is happening in Olympus, which is so the Lost Hero core. They can't reach Olympus at all in the Lost Hero because Hera's missing. Anyways, she is not the Lost Hero. But anyways, Clarice says Luke has a whole army on that ship. Can't know what's coming. It's up to them. And Percy grabs the key from her hand, says the fleece will be heavily guarded. The second they grab it, alarms will go off, which is why they need to rescue Annabeth first. She says it's a risk, and she's done risking the quest or camp for anyone else. They're in this position because of Percy. They had the fleece, and they lost the fleece because of him. And he's like, I've been on the boat before. I have the key card and Annabeth's hat. I can get in and get out. And she's like, okay, give me all of those things. Give me the hat. Give me the key card. And he's like, why don't we work together? And she says, now where I take them about the aforementioned items. She's not budging with him. And then he says that maybe her prophecy was right. And she's like, what? She's caught off guard by this, right? Because as sassy as Percy is, he is very rarely, in my opinion, he's very rarely cruel, okay? Like, this is something that, like, he's weaponizing against her because he knows, like, she confided in him, like, I'm worried that I'm, like, this is what my prophecy says, like, I'm going to fail without my friends. She confided that in him when they were on the ship with all the dead people. And so him using this against her is mean. This was a mean moment on Percy's part. Anyways, she's clearly caught off guard because, again, as much as they have beef, I don't think Percy is typically cruel to her. But he repeats the line, fail without friends to fly home alone, and says that she's going to fail because she pushes everybody away. Basically, he called her a friendless loser. Then Grover steps in to mediate, like he often does. I love that about Grover. And Clarice asks how Percy would do it then. And Percy says that there's an employee elevator. The key card will take them to the service corridor. And while he's explaining this, she takes the key and pushes him to the floor and leaves. Then Tyson and Grover go to help Percy, and he's like, it's okay, I'll get another key. But when we get off the boat, we're going to need to leave really fast. So can you find a ride to camp? And Grover says they're on it. Aiden, the Aphrodite boy, laughs, still tied up, says winning the war is going to be easier than they thought. How? How is winning the war going to be easier than you thought? You're literally tied up. If the people on your side are like you, it's not going to be easy for you to win the war because you literally fell for a Cyclops. Like, you genuinely thought that Allison Sims winning the war is going to be easy. You're literally tied. And, like, spoiler for the rest of the episode, they get the fleece. So what are you talking about that winning the war is going to be easy? Not if they have people like you on their side, okay? You literally, I'm sorry, the first time I got tricked by a Cyclops, I would never go to a voice. I would make sure I saw the person. Why is Allison Sims calling you into some random room? Why do you follow the voice? Why don't you think, oh, they have a Cyclops? Winning the war is going to be easy. You're losing. You're losing already. Flop, loser. Like, what are you talking about? Okay, yeah, Percy really cares about his friend. But you know what he also does? Has good results. So, like, anyways, that just really pissed me off. That really pissed me off. But anyways, Luke is in the big main room where Kronos' coffin is. I don't know what it's called. In my brain, it's like the throne room, but there's no throne. It's just like the coffin. Anyways, he's looking at the dagger, his dagger, which is Annabeth's dagger, but it was his first, and that dagger is very, very important. Not yet, but like the dagger is very important for the last book specifically. So he's looking at the dagger, and then Allison Sims comes in with the fleece, and he asks what she's doing, and she says putting it where it belongs. And he's like, I make the call when to do that. I found it. Mind you, no, you didn't. Okay, Percy found it and gave it to you because Annabeth was dying. So like, fuck you. And she says that he's using it to heal the enemy. What is her problem? What is her problem? I went on this tangent yesterday when I originally recorded this episode, but like Allison Sims as a character really frustrates me because I don't understand her motivations. Like, as much as I really dislike Luke, and I think his like thought process is deeply flawed, and I don't agree I don't agree with his takes at all and his approach, and I do really, he pisses me off. Especially he does something in episode 8 that like literally I'm like, fuck, like you're literally so stupid and like a loser. But there's depth to his character, and I like wondered for a little bit if it was because she's not a character in the book, so I don't have this extra insight into her character that I do with the others. Like, I obviously know Luke's backstory, but it's not even that, because in the document we get with the show, in this text, we get like depth to Luke's character. Even if he pisses me off, there's like vulnerability there that makes his frustrating moments make sense. Whereas Allison Sims, because we know very little about her and there's nothing to indicate why she is going so hard for Kronos in the same way that we know about Luke, or specifically why she has such a beef with Annabeth in particular. And because of that, it just, I can't excuse it. I can't, it bothers me. It bothers me so much more than like Luke, because I'm like, what is your beef with Annabeth? Luke's beef, I understand it. I disagree with it. And I think his approach is horrible. And I still think he's a loser. But it's like Allison Sims, it's like right now the only things we are getting is that you have this weird vendetta against a child. And you graduated, right? Like that is, when we meet Allison Sims, it could have been a very brief also, like I'm a big fan. I really like the show, but I will say, I wish that we had gotten, like, it would have done wonders to have a singular comment, a throwaway comment of like Allison Sims having a bad experience at camp. Allison Sims, something about her relationship with her father, because her dad's Apollo, something that indicates why she is so evil. Because Luke is like evil, right? But we have there's backstory, there's history, it's like, what is Allison Sims' problem? You know? Like, even a throwaway when Annabeth sees her, I mean, has she said anything? If she did, it was so brief that like, it didn't register to me. And overwhelmingly, the moments we get from her are things like this, where she's like, you're using it to heal the enemy. She's 13. Not that I'm underestimating Annabeth, because obviously she is your enemy, if you will. She's against you because you're on the wrong side of history. But like, I don't know. Isn't your dad Apollo too, the god of healing, but you want Annabeth to die? Like, you want Annabeth to die. Why? Using it to heal the enemy. I would understand this anger if like he used it to heal Annabeth and then let her get away. She's literally held hostage right now. She's of no threat to you and you're mad. Like, she just pisses me off. Anyways, Luke says Annabeth is not the enemy. And Alice says Annabeth threw her off the ship and then tried to blow it up. Okay, you're alive, first of all. You were fine. Oh, you got a little wet. Okay, grow up. And tried to blow up the ship. The ship's also fine. The ship's also fine. Both of those things are attempted crime. Even if she had committed those crimes, not worth dying over. Like, it's not, she doesn't deserve to die over it. But she didn't, they were attempted. Okay, the ship's fine and you're fine. So move on. I don't understand this weird vendetta you have with the child. It's like, what is your problem, Allison Sims? What is your problem? Anyways, Luke grabs the fleece from her and puts it on Kronos' tomb. Very intense music plays, and this is a common thing that happens when Kronos is like, they have like a physical reaction to Kronos. It's like Kronos' voice is when there's this high-pitched, intense music, right? Okay. He clearly is hearing something that Kronos is saying. It's having an impact on him. We see this happen to Percy later as well. Like, it's a Anyways, Clarice and Percy then are each separately on the ship looking for what they each want. Clarice is below deck looking for the fleece, and Percy is on deck looking for Annabeth. Clarice passes a room. It looks like a work break room. I don't really know what to describe it, but it's on the ship, and there's a bunch of weapons, and it looks like a break room, a conference room. I don't really know. It's a big room with a bunch of round tables, if you need the visual. And there's weapons, there's chips on the table, which she eats. And then with Percy hears a Pegasus. They're in these stalls, but he ducks. He begins to approach the stalls, but he ducks when somebody leaves the Pegasus area. Clarice is looking at the weapons, and then she hears somebody coming and hides. It's a group of demigods. They're theorizing about the iris messages being down, which Grover previously told us as the audience. One of them says that it was probably Luke who shut down the network because he found out that the rogue demigods were using the iris messages. And then another one is like, that would hurt Zeus's people too, so that doesn't make any sense. And then another one is like, maybe we shouldn't say his name so loudly. But one of them pushes back, and it's like, we can't be afraid of him or any of our parents. We have the Titans on our side. And then one of the giants comes in. Side note, the only monsters we see are the giants. And I understand this probably from like a production standpoint. It's like you have the costumes. I understand that. I wish that from my recollection in the books, it was like there were a bunch of different kind of monsters on board. I wish that we saw more of Luke's team beyond just like these specific cannibal giants. But maybe that's just me. That's a very minor critique, but I do just wish we got more, because right now it really just felt like the demigods and the giants. It didn't feel like all of these shunned, groups of people are joining together in the way that the books did for me personally, but it's very, very minor complaint. Anyways, one of the giants comes in and agrees that they shouldn't be scared. On deck, the Pegasus handler person hears a noise in this, it looks like a canteen, like when you're on like a cruise ship, they have I don't know how to describe it. Anyways, it's like a little, or maybe it's supposed to be a supply closet area. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But she hears a noise from inside, so she goes inside, and then she gets trapped in there. Percy closes the door. He takes off the hat. Obviously, he was making the noise and lured her in. And then, anyways, so she's trapped there. So he goes into the Pegasus stall, and we see a Pegasus, and they have a conversation, but we don't hear Blackjack's voice. And I thought this was a really funny choice because obviously in the books, it's from Percy's perspective, so we hear it in his head. But I thought this was really fun as a viewer to kind of be in the position that the other people around him are, where it's like we don't hear Blackjack's voice. Actually, I thought that was funny. I like this choice. Would I be opposed to hearing Blackjack's voice in later seasons? Absolutely not. I would love to hear his voice, but I thought it was fine. I thought it was funny and like a very interesting choice of us as the audience get to experience what his peers do when he's just talking to this horse and we don't hear what the horse is saying back. First, Percy calls him buddy, and then he corrects himself and is like, oh, sorry, Blackjack. Again, we don't hear this. And then he removes Blackjack's restraints and leaves. The handler is still yelling to be let out. Clarice in the break room area is still eavesdropping / hiding. Someone says that Aiden went to deal with the harbor master and he left his mythomagic deck, and they start to play this game. And I thought this was such a fun little way to introduce mythomagic, because that's really only introduced in the third book from my recollection. Nico, who's a character in the third book, is really into mythomagic. And this was a very fun little Easter egg. I like the ways that we're getting introduced to things that are canon in the world in these fun little ways. Annabeth is struggling in the confines of her bed. She hears a noise and then pretends to be asleep. But Percy, invisible, is like, it's okay, wise girl, or something along the lines. He assures her and uses the very sweet nickname of wise girl. He takes off his hat. He asks if she's okay, says they don't have much time. They need to move quick. And she's like, what about Grover? And he's like, oh, we have him. He's safe. Is your hat is really itchy, by the way. Is it itchy for you? That was funny. They need to get off the ship fast. Can she run? And she says no. And he's like, oh, are you still hurt? And she says, no, they just can't leave without the fleece. And Percy's like, Clarice is on that. And Annabeth is like, Clarice, because she's surprised that they're working together. She's like, you're working together. And he says, not exactly. You're my priority. And the fleece was hers. And like, once again, another beautiful banger, super romantic line from Percy Jackson to Annabeth Chase. Now, you know what's super interesting? What's super, super interesting is like, I understand all these people who are like rooting every time he says something romantic, because it is romantic. It is romantic because we have the context of the fact that this is one of the greatest love stories of all time. So I'm with you. I'm with you. This is so romantic. But I also am just like, it's romantic in the context of like everything that comes. But at the end of the day, it's like he's not saying this in a romantic sense. It's not, because they're still children and it's still just like innocent crushes, even if it is, you know what I mean? It's like, I feel like a lot of people, and don't get me wrong, I fall into this category a lot of the times too. You're like an adult, for the adults watching it, you're like applying the way he speaks to her as if that was something that like somebody you were interested in romantically said to you, how romantic that would be. And it's like, yeah, that would be so romantic if somebody was like, you're my priority. It makes me think of Amara Corey. Corey Wardenberger would say these like beautiful things like, you're my path forward to America, when they were in the game of Big Brother. And it's like things like that where it's like, that is just so romantic when somebody talks like that. Like, I understand. Don't get me wrong. But it's just like, he's not saying you're my priority in the weight, like the heavy, impactful way that we're receiving it as. Nonetheless, it is still romantic, but it's also not romantic. Like, it's platonic. It's romantic in a platonic way. You know what I mean? Like, things are so romantic, but that doesn't mean that it's like romantic. That made sense to me. Hope it did to you too. But anyways, Annabeth says Clarice is right. The fleece is all that matters. She understands now what it can do. There's a noise, and she tells him to hide. He puts on his hat. Luke comes in. Annabeth pretends to be asleep. And we see Percy invisible with the hat, like we saw Annabeth a few episodes ago. I like this effect. I mentioned it before, so I wanted to mention it again. But Luke asks Annabeth how she's feeling. She says alive because of him. And he brought her dagger back too. She thanks him. He says it was his first. And he says things always end up where they should. The Fleece is working on Kronos right now, healing him, speeding his return from Tartarus, all thanks to Percy. He defied the will of the gods by handing it over. And we see invisible Percy kind of like have a reaction to this. Obviously he doesn't like this because, one, it's a complete mischaracterization. Okay, Percy wasn't defying the will of the gods. He was just laser focused in on the fact that Annabeth was going to die if she didn't get the fleece. It wasn't from the same motivation of when you defy the gods, right? You defy the gods because you want to stick it to them. Percy's defying the gods out of like a need to protect Annabeth, out of a care for his friends and loved ones. So the thing you're talking about is just completely way off. It's completely way off. Luke interprets Percy's actions through the lens of what his motivations would be in that scenario. So he's like, yeah, I would, who cares about saving the tree because I don't care about camp. But Percy's not thinking, I don't care about camp. Who cares about saving the tree? The fleece doesn't matter. He's thinking about, like, he's not defying the will of the gods. He's protecting Annabeth. Luke says the kid's got heart. And Annabeth's like, Percy wasn't thinking about the gods. He was thinking about saving a friend, literally. And Luke replies, and he ended up saving the world. And it's like, how? Like, the thing that really irritates me about Luke, like, I hate this idea. Like, he keeps talking about saving the world and saving the world and things will be better and making things better and yada, yada, yada. And I just do not ascribe to this idea that we need to destroy things to make them better, to rebuild them, to start anew. I think that there is obviously, when things are destroyed by some external force or some kind of conflict, I don't think if something's destroyed, you can ever rebuild, and there's not beauty in rebuilding and growth and all that. I'm not saying that, like, if something's destroyed, you're fucked. I'm not saying that in any capacity. But I just don't like this idea that in order to progress, we need to tear everything down to start from scratch. I don't like that idea. I think, especially when your idea is like, we need to start a war. Why do all these people need to die? That's actually like the least productive thing that you can do. Like, that's like literally how like so many battles have been fought and won, nations have been started and ended through wars. That's actually like the least, in my opinion, productive, innovative, like thing that we can do is kill a bunch of people to make change. That's like the last, like that's like, okay. I hate it. Like, you're not saving the world by destroying it first. Anyways, Annabeth tells Luke he needs to stop this. He needs to get the fleece off the he needs to get the fleece off the sarcophagus now. Luke says he can't do that. And Annabeth says he can. He just has to leave now, get it, and bring it back to her. And invisible Percy has a moment of like realization that obviously she's talking to him, right? She's not saying this to Luke, she's saying this to Percy. We hear a door creak open. Obviously it was Percy, he understood, and Luke sends his people to check out what the noise was. Grover and Tyson, meanwhile, are on Long Island. They're on like the pier boardwalk area. And Grover is standing while Tyson hot wires a car. He does so successfully. What can't Tyson do? What can't Tyson do? He hot wires the car, and Grover says they need to get out of there before anybody notices. And then Tyson moves to the passenger seat, and Grover's like, what are you doing? I need you to drive. And Tyson's like, I don't know how to drive. Maybe Percy. And Grover's like, that's a bad idea. He doesn't know what to do. Percy said they need to find a way to get back to camp, and they don't have any money. What about the hippocampi? And Tyson's like, I told them to leave. Rainbow doesn't like coming this far north. It's too cold. And Tyson says maybe they should call someone stronger, wiser, someone who can help. And they call Sally, who I love. I love so much. I love so much. I love seeing her. She asks how he is, and he's like, Tyson calls and he says he's great. Did she get his letter? And then she's like, did something happen at camp? And he's like, no, camp's great, really great. I was just wondering if you could give me a ride to camp. And she's like, you're not at camp. And then Grover grabs the phone and is like, hey, Sally, it's Grover. And Sally's like, I thought you were somewhere on the other side of the world. And he's like, yeah, no, I came back, but we were all just on a field trip and we missed the bus. So now we don't have a way to get back, and we need to get to camp. She's like, Grover, I've been mother to a demigod for 13 years and to a cyclops for 1. Just tell me what's really going on. And there was a very funny moment where she's saying this, and the like cashier lady at the store that she's at clearly has a reaction to this. And it was very funny, very comedic. I really enjoyed this. And I love Sally. Anyway, she heads out of the store that she was at. On the Princess Andromeda, Allison is guarding Kronos' coffin with the fleece on it and reading a magazine about the hunters of Artemis. And I do not blame Artemis for not wanting you. Not that she rejected you, but like, I feel like she probably did. I'm just kidding. I really feel bad about hating Allison, and I don't want to. I don't want to hate Allison, but I just genuinely don't understand what isn't like. There's no redeeming. Right now, she's just bitter and angry, and like Luke hates the gods, but there's like some heart there. There's some vulnerability. There's some moments of like, I've sacrificed so much. It's like, what's Allison's problem? What happened to Allison? What's her tragic backstory? What's her PTC, personal tragedy card? What is her story? She's reading the magazine about the hunters of Artemis, and the coffin begins to make a noise. She asks it what, gets up and walks towards it. There's a vibration, noise, and she responds, it will be done. I don't know. I just had a moment where I felt like I was back in church. I haven't been to church in years, but it's like, will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That is the first thing I thought of. So sorry to Jesus. Luke is with Annabeth, and he's explaining that their siege is ready, in motion. It's going to break down camp to the point where they're ready to surrender, and the fleece will just give them new power and hope, and then they'll die. They'll fail. So he can't. That's why he can't give them the fleece. He's really sparing their life. Because if he tries to fight, if they try to fight, they'll fail. So he can't give them any hope, because the hope will just lead them to their deaths. You could also just not kill them, but okay. Anyways, she asks, what if there's something that could change his mind? And he says nothing can change his mind. She says she had a vision. When it was healing her, she felt the fleece's power, its history, what it can do. It can bring Thalia back. And he's like, that's not possible. Thalia's gone. And Annabeth is like, is she? No one was there that night. No one knows what happened. In her heart, she always knew. And he corrects, wished. You wished. You didn't know. She's like, so did you. Admit it. This is Thalia we're talking about. And then she reminds him of the quote that Thalia said, "We take care of our own." And Luke is like, if the fleece could bring Thalia back, Kronos would have told me before I poisoned the tree. Why? Why do you have so much faith in him? Like, why do you have so much faith in this guy who poisoned his children? I understand he's manipulating you. He's manipulating you. He's manipulating you. And like, I get it. I get it. Okay, I can have empathy for Luke. It's like, okay, I'm a big fan of Tell Me Lies. And a lot of people who watch the show are like, I don't understand why Lucy keeps going back to Steven. And I have a lot of empathy for Lucy. Maybe I just need to view it through that lens. Maybe I need to have grace and compassion for Luke and be like, he's being manipulated. Okay. Maybe it's because I'm not seeing the manipulation from Kronos, right? I don't feel the. So like I see how evil Stephen DeMarco is. So when Lucy does something and falls into his web of deceit and everything, I'm like, well, he's evil, so I can't even blame her. And honestly, Stephen DeMarco kind of more evil than Kronos. So I don't understand his faith in Kronos, but alas, must I remind you, he ate his children. Your whole beef is that the gods are bad parents. 2 + 2, whatever. Annabeth says to ask Kronos to tell him the truth. Then there's a high-pitched noise, the one that is common with Kronos, and Luke feels it in his head, and he's clearly in pain, and he staggers away. Annabeth finishes untying herself and gets up and begins to leave the room once Luke has staggered away. We see Allison enter the break room area where Clarice is hiding, and she grabs her bow, asks the demigods that are gathered there if they want to kill a traitor, and one of them asks if she means Annabeth because Luke said, and Annabeth is like, my orders came straight from Kronos. If Luke gives me any trouble, I might need backup. She leaves, the rest follow her, including the giants. Clarice then leaves her hiding spot and grabs a bunch of the weapons and heads after them. Percy walks into the coffin room. It's not a throne room. I don't know why in my brain it's a throne room. Anyways, he hears the high-pitched noise as well and feels the pain that Luke did, and Kronos' voice greets him. Meanwhile, Annabeth grabs her dagger, and then she sees Allison and her little cohort coming. Back to Percy, Kronos tells him that he knew he'd return to him, and Percy remembers what he'd said, that his survival was the key to Kronos' return, and he now knows what Kronos meant, the great prophecy. He thinks that Percy will help him destroy Olympus, but he's wrong. And Kronos says that he will tell him the great prophecy if he leaves him the fleece, and Percy says, you would just lie. And then he begins to recite it. And I can do that too, Kronos. You're not special. Okay. You're not special. He cuts him off before he finishes it. But I told myself I wouldn't do this again. No, I'm kidding. But I literally, last time I recited it, I'm like, I don't need to recite it every episode. But Kronos begins to recite it. So anyways, it's a haplet of the eldest god shall reach 16 against all odds and see the world in endless sleep. The hero's soul cursed blade shall reap. A single choice to end his days, Olympus to preserve or raise. Now, Kronos gets to the part where he says a cursed blade, the hero's soul cursed blade, and he cuts him off. I believe is around when he stops him. He doesn't get to the end, right? A single choice to end his days, Olympus to preserve or raise. And Percy grabs the fleece and shuts him up. Then Luke appears and realizes that it was Percy. When the door opened, it was Percy getting away and Annabeth lied. Allison, meanwhile, tells Annabeth that she's sorry, but Kronos' orders were clear. Then one of the giants gets stabbed, which distracts them. They all turn back to look at him. He disintegrates like monsters do. It was Clarice. She stabbed him with a spear or something. And she's super not worried about going 5 against 1. Then 2 battle scenes commence and they're intercut. It's Clarice with Allison and all her people, and then Percy and Luke one-on-one. One of the demigods sees Annabeth, goes after her, but she knocks them out. Then Percy and Luke, meanwhile, fall over the coffin, and the coffin begins to fall off its pedestal. And Luke goes to fix it, obviously, because he's subservient to his master Kronos. But Percy gets away because fuck Kronos. Who cares if his coffin breaks? Percy is very intensely pressing the elevator button. Eventually it does come, but as he's in the elevator and as the elevator doors are closing, Luke stabs him through the elevator Luckily, Percy has the fleece, so like he doesn't die, but still really nasty of Luke to do in the first place. Clarice defeats Allison and her group all by herself and says she really needed that. Like I say, I really needed that at the end of the day when I'm curling up in bed doing nothing. Like that's so real. For me, it's a nice, relaxing evening. For Clarice, it's winning a battle. Everybody decompresses in their own way. Annabeth says she thought Clarice was going for the fleece. And Clarice is like, I planned a detour when I heard what they were planning. Is that okay? And she's like, yeah, thank you. Percy's going for the fleece. And Clarice is like, do you really think he's going to be able to get it on his own? And then alarms blare. And she's like, well, that doesn't mean what it. Annabeth and Clarice exit onto the deck, and the Pegasus Keeper and some other demigods say there they are. But then Blackjack comes flying down and knocks them off board. He comes back to the deck, and Annabeth is like, that's Luke's Pegasus. And Percy, coming onto the deck, is like, no, it's not. And Annabeth is like, you're bleeding. And he's like, I'm okay. This fleece really works. Then says, that's Blackjack. He's a friend. He asks Blackjack if he can take Clarice to Camp Half-Blood and tells Clarice it's her quest. She should be the one to complete it. And she's like, you're just letting me win. And he's like, it's not about winning or losing. It's about getting the fleece to camp. There's only room for one. And he knows that she won't stop for anything. She says, what about the prophecy about what he said earlier? And he says he was wrong in a lot of ways. He apologizes for using the prophecy against her when she trusted him with it. And then he says, and I wrote this down verbatim because I thought it was really sweet. He says, I don't think your prophecy means that you'd fail because you don't have friends. It means you'd fail without friends to help you to fly home alone, which was so sweet. It was so sweet. It was like, I don't think you're going to fail because you don't have friends. I think you would fail if you didn't have friends to help you fly home alone. You're not flying home alone because you failed, you know? Very, very beautiful. Sweet, sweet guy. Clarice looks at Annabeth. She nods. Then she gets on Blackjack. Percy hands her the fleece. She thanks him. Percy and Annabeth then meet Tyson on the boardwalk. He gestures for them to come to a car. River yells from the back seat to get in. Percy asks whose car it is. Sally is driving. Sally and Tyson in unison say, get in. And Percy is still like, whose car is this? It is a blue Prius. For book readers, we all know whose blue Prius this is. There's also a bumper sticker that says, I'd rather be teaching. Super slay, super iconic. Love that. We all know whose car it is, and thank God for that. But anyways, I think it's really funny that Sally ends up dating somebody named Paul. Like, what's with her and P names? Like, Poseidon, Paul, Percy. They're driving to camp. And Sally asks for clarification. She's like, the fleece can bring Annabeth's friend back. And Annabeth is like, I may finally get to see her again. Grover agrees, says it's incredible. He asks Percy if he can believe it. And Percy is clearly like lost in thought, right? And Sally can notice that something's up with him. He's not really responding. Annabeth asks Grover how long he thinks it'll take after Clarice puts the fleece on the tree for Thalia to come back. And he says he doesn't know. The tree isn't an ordinary tree. It's divine magic, like the fleece. He then says, and I also wrote this down verbatim because I thought it was super important, when two equally powerful forces collide, there's no telling what will happen, which is very true of Percy and Thalia as well. Like, that's so true of Percy and Thalia and like what they mean for each other. And I just thought that I really like that quote. Annabeth says that when they get to camp, Thalia might already be there, and Grover's explanation of this are in the background while the camera focus is in on Percy's like conflicted face. He imagines thunder grumbling, his vision of the storm and Thalia and the cloak bursting through the doors of the big house at camp, shocking him with lightning, the dream he had earlier, and then it's back to Percy's face. He's clearly like tuning them out in the background while he's like thinking about what Thalia coming back means for him. The episode ends with a scene of Luke in the coffin room asking Kronos why he didn't tell him that the fleece could bring Thalia back. The high-pitched sound disarms him and he like falls back. He tells Kronos he's loyal, he sacrificed everything for him, and then Kronos' voice says to prove it. Luke is clearly in pain. Like the high-pitched noise, the power that Kronos is emitting is clearly causing him pain. Kronos says that the barrier still stands at the Olympian camp. The time for mercy is over. He needs to join their forces, burn the camp to the ground, and kill the son of Poseidon. And the episode ends on like Luke's face, determined to kill the son of Poseidon. I'm the son of Poseidon. Episode 8 is called The Fleece Works Its Magic Too Well. We open once again with the night that Thalia was transformed into a tree. Thalia, we get it a little bit more in detail in time. They arrive. Thalia sends Luke ahead, tells him to get Annabeth to camp. She'll hold them off. It's these three Furies. She says, we take care of our own. They go ahead and she stays behind. And then we cut to Percy lost in thought. Annabeth's words of the prophecy and his vision of Thalia are replaying in his head. And then Sally asks him what's wrong. And he says nothing, but before he can finish his sentence, he says, look out. And Sally breaks. Blackjack's there. And Tyson's like, where's Clarice? Percy gets out of the car. Sally is like confused at first why he's getting out of the car. And he's like, I know him. And Sally's like, yeah, he knows him. Super normal. My kid is friends with the Pegasus. She says to them that they're growing up so fast. Their worlds is so, they have a lot to carry. Annabeth says that's how Thalia is going to help. Percy won't have to carry the weight of the prophecy alone. Tyson's like, wait, Thalia might be the one from the prophecy, not Percy. And Sally's like, prophecy. And Grover says, isn't there always? So true. So true. There's always a prophecy. There's always a prophecy. There's always fate. There's always something coming. He's so right. He's so right. There is always a prophecy. Percy knocks on the car window and Sally rolls it down. He explains that Clarice never made it to the tree. There's monsters surrounding camp, so she took off on foot with the fleece. They all get out of the car, including Sally, but Percy like stops her and is like, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm not letting you go ahead. But Percy asks her not to come. And I really love this scene because he talks about like the Minotaur and how he can't let her get close to that kind of danger again. And it was just so well done. It's easy when you're watching the show and it's all fantasy and yada, yada, yada. And like, oh, they're always about to die and people are dying, they're always in danger, to like not really take, like, it's a very impactful moment when you realize genuinely like how young these people are and like the traumas they're going through and how much they really do have to carry, like Sally's saying. And as much as Percy is like so fearless in his pursuit of those he cares about and so willing to put himself in danger and like it was a very nice moment of like, he is still a kid. He is still a kid and he doesn't want to lose his mom. And last season, as much as it seems like he went straight to this quest and he was determined to go on the quest. It was just very beautiful. It was very, very beautiful. A nice moment of vulnerability and of like realizing how much that really did impact him, because it's like, we can all forget Sally's alive. And for years after, like, I have to be honest, for years after I read the book, the fact that Sally died was something I forgot about. I forgot about the fact that like the whole first book, he was like, because so much happened so much happened after that like, obviously when I reread the books, obviously I remembered that. And ever since, and with the musical, but like for a solid few years there, I like Sally dying is like not because she comes back to life. She doesn't technically die. She's like held, whatever, if you know. But it is just really impactful to see how much that did impact Percy. And I appreciated that. I really did. I really appreciated it. And it was very well done. Walker's a great actor. And she says, okay, but it's not just her that he's worried about, is it? And he brings up the dream that she had in the first episode about the coin with the two sides, one with the trident, one with the scythe. And he thought that it was about him, the two sides of him, like good versus bad. But now he thinks it might have been about, and she finishes, Thalia. And I love this. I love this. Again, the two equally powerful forces colliding. There's no telling what will happen. That's Percy and Thalia. They are the two children of the eldest gods. And when they collide, and also in the book, specifically in book 2, we find out a lot more about Thalia. And she's very often like, Annabeth tells Percy that he reminds her a lot of Thalia, and they'd either like be best friends or like mortal enemies because of how similar they are. So I just really like what we're building to with the Thalia Percy duo. I really like this. Anyways, and I I saw an edit that I really, really loved, that it was like girls so confusing to Thalia and Percy. I loved that edit. It was so good to me. I loved it. Anyways, Tyson comes to grab Percy. He hugs Sally goodbye and asks her to promise she'll stay a safe distance away. Back at camp, the campers are cleaning up the chariot arena and Tantalus is giving an annoying speech. Then Chris Rodriguez, I don't know why I gave him his full name. There's only one Chris. Chris stops him, tells him another giant broke through. The border is getting weaker. They need more people to patrol. And Tantalus says, no can do. We need to work on the race. And Chris is like, soon enough, there won't be any races because there won't be any camp. It's like, baby, there's no playing. My daughter still goes, Mommy, when are we going to do the chariot races? Baby, there's no camp, okay? What do you mean? But Tantalus says that none of them have ever seen a real siege. And he begins to work about back in his day, and he talks about picking up weapons. And as he's doing this, he picks up a chicken wing and he realizes that he's picking up this chicken wing. He's holding food, right? Because if you don't know, Tantalus's whole punishment is that he can't eat. He realizes, he's like, oh my God, the gods have lifted my curse because I'm right. And then a flaming boulder comes and kills him. And you know what? Thank God. The giants did one thing. They ate with that one thing. Tantalus didn't. Tantalus didn't eat, but the giants did. The barrier is cackling. It's like clearly getting weaker, and campers are shooting arrows at the giants. The giants are shooting their flaming boulders, trying to break the barrier. It's like it's a standoff right now. The campers are trying to get them away, and the giants are trying to break through the barrier. Annabeth, Grover, Percy, and Tyson are watching from the woods, and Annabeth says Bronte, her sister, who's the one leading the campers who are shooting the arrows at the giants. Annabeth says she doesn't have enough people. She probably hasn't slept in days. And Percy says Clarice definitely didn't stop this way. And then Tyson hears something. His hearing is better than mortals, and it's shaking in the ground. Then we see a bunch of vans driving up the narrow road to camp. Out of them come Luke's people, the giants, the demigods, and Tyson begins to repeat what Luke is saying to his people in his voice as Tyson does. He says he wants them all on Half-Blood Hill. They're going in. One of the demigods asks Luke if he's sure that they can cross, and Luke says the barrier won't stop demigods, and it hasn't stopped their team inside camp from letting their friends, the giants, in. And Annabeth is like, team inside camp? Then Allison Sims tells Luke to finish what he started with the tree, bring it down, and bring the barrier down. What is her problem? What is her problem? You're beefing with a tree. You're beefing with a 13-year-old and a tree. A child and a tree. Grow up, Allison Sims. Grow up. Like, she has this specific vendetta against, it feels like, women in Luke's life. And I don't like that. I wish that I had some kind of tragic backstory of why you hate your dad. That would be more compelling to me than some weird possessiveness you seem to have with Luke. And maybe that's just my reading of it, but it's like, why do you have beef with Annabeth? Why do you have beef with Thalia? She's a tree right now. She can't do anything to you. I'm sorry. It's just like, I really, like, for a while, I was like, maybe it's just because I have this backstory on Luke that I'm like able to sympathize with him a bit more. And but I don't think so. Now that the whole season has come out, I think genuinely, even if I was just watching the show, I think we get more insight and depth into Luke's character and why he is the way he is than we do Allison. And I understand she's a minor character. Okay. I understand that it's not that deep. Like, Luke is a more significant character, so that's why he's more fully fleshed. But I do hope if Allison Sims becomes like a character, like, going forward, I hope we learn a little bit more about her and why she's so on Kronos' side, because I don't understand her motivations. It really feels like she has a vendetta against these people in Luke's life specifically. And I don't understand it. But alas. Luke says this battle is just the beginning. They will burn camp to the ground and anyone left inside. But when the battle is over, the tree must still stand. The war will be decided by a child of the big three. Thalia will destroy Olympus. She is the most powerful demigod alive. Mind you, she's actively a tree. So, like, alive, ? Is she? I mean, trees are living, but, like, he says they need to free her from the tree. In the woods, Clarice is making her way to camp. Making my way downtown. An arrow misses her. Making my way through, making my way to camp. Arrows past, and I'm homebound. I don't know. Katie yells that another one got through the barrier, and Clarice tells them to hold their fire. It's her. And then Chris comes to, and a group of others. Clarice says that they have to escort her now. They've got a lot of ground to cover. And Chris says that they're all needed out here. Monsters are breaking through the barrier, through the border. The barrier is about to fall. And Clarice is like, not if we get the fleece to the tree. And they start heading in that direction. Percy asks Annabeth how Luke knows that the fleece can bring Thalia back. Percy and Annabeth are like, they have walked ahead, and Grover and Tyson are back. So they're having this conversation just one-on-one. And he asks how Luke knows about the fleece and its ability to bring Thalia back. And Annabeth is like, I told him. And he's like, why? And Annabeth says that Thalia is the only thing that Luke cares about more than Kronos. Percy asks how Annabeth knows that Thalia would be on their side. And she says she knows. And then he says that he had heard Kronos say that there was another. Annabeth was worried that the great prophecy was about him, but what about Thalia? And she's like, is this about the dream you had? And he's like, well, yes. No, I'm kidding. He's like, demigod dreams are dangerous. You're the one who told me that. And she says that Kronos can manipulate dreams. If he got into Ares' head, he can get into yours. Don't let him. Because if you don't remember, in the first book, Zeus's lightning rod is stolen, right? And it was Luke who was the lightning thief, and the reason he stole it was because of Kronos. But Kronos had manipulated Ares to wanting to start a war with the gods, and he facilitated it. So that's what she's referencing. Okay, Kronos got in his head, and is the reason that Ares wanted to start this war. Okay, and then Percy says, and I wrote this exchange down verbatim. Okay, he says, you think she'll be on our side because she's your friend? Annabeth replies, that's right. And he replies, but she's Luke's friend too. She'd have to choose between the two of you. You can't imagine what that's like. And Annabeth walks ahead, and then Tyson asks what they're going to do. They see some giants up ahead. Annabeth says that they're heading to the convoy, and then asks Grover which way. Annabeth says that she and Grover should go track down the fleece, and Percy and Tyson can go help Bronte. And then some campers see them and tell them not to move, call them the exiles. And Percy says to hear them out. But Ellis instructs the others to take them to custody. He's not giving them an inch. Annabeth, this is how we find out his name is Ellis, because she's like, Ellis, Clarice needs our help. And he's like, you tried to steal her quest. You shouldn't have come back. Mind you, Clarice needs their help. Who cares who stole whose quest? Okay, you're under attack and you're fighting. Okay, obviously you're children, but like, please. Percy rightfully is like, we don't have time for this. There's an army at our front door, and Ellis just tells his people that if they resist, to cut them down. He's really not giving them an inch. I'm like, okay, enough of this. Percy's like, okay. He puts his hands up, and he's like, take us to Tantalus. And they reveal that Tantalus is gone. He was hit by a fireball. And Percy's like, who's in charge of camp then? And we hear Mr. D, Dionysus, singing. And then we see Dionysus singing in the big house to a group of young campers. And Ellis brings Annabeth, Percy, Grover, and Tyson into this room. And Dionysus is like, bring them to Tantalus. But then the satyr assistant, who we met in the first few episodes, who does not have a name. I know, because like in the credits, he doesn't have a name. It's like satyr something. He doesn't have a name. But anyways, that guy, I mentioned him before. He like whispers to Mr. D in a way that really felt like that photo of, hopefully you know what I'm talking about. I really don't want to, like, not to be insensitive, okay, because that was a very serious moment in United States history, but like that just feels like that it felt like that's what it invoked to me, okay. But anyways, Annabeth says that Clarice has the fleece. If they got here before she did, that means she's in trouble. And then Mr. D thinks Clarice has the fleece. I'm not a singer. I'm so sorry. Percy adds that Luke has demigods and monsters ready to enter camp at any moment. And Dionysus is just like, so? And Percy's like, you're camp director. He's still unbothered. He does not care, literally at all. And Percy's like, Luke isn't just after us. He's after you two. He wants to bring the Titans back and destroy Olympus. Like this. This is serious. Okay, this is serious. And Mr. D is like, that's enough. Is there a Titan actively attacking camp right now? Percy's like, well, no. And Mr. D's like, then I can't help you. Okay, you need to start working at your differences on your own. And Annabeth is like, differences? And then Percy just announces that Kronos is back. There's mumbling, right? There's like, oh my God, Kronos is back. And Mr. D's like, there's no proof that's true. And Percy's like, he spoke to me. And this made me think of like, you know that meme where it's like, oh, I saw Goody Proctor with the devil. What were you doing with the devil? Or something like that. That's what it made me think of, because it's like, oh, Kronos is back. He spoke to me. It's like, why were you speaking to Kronos? Although that doesn't really apply. I apologize for comparing. It's really not applicable, but it's the first thing I thought of. It's like, I spoke to Kronos. It's like, why? Okay, why were you speaking to Kronos? But anyways, and then Percy says, and I wrote this down verbatim because it touched me so it touched me so much. I loved this. I love this little speech. He says, look. This is it. This is the real thing. What Chiron's been training us for. We all grew up hearing these stories about heroes. You think that story, that quest, that prophecy, it's got to be about someone else, but it's not. It's just us. There is no bigger hero or divine intervention to come to our rescue. We have to take care of our own, because that's what real heroes do. We stand up for each other. We stand up for our home. And as he says we stand up for our home, he pulls up Riptide in like a battle cry. And I loved this. I thought it was so beautiful. It was like an homage, a nod to Thalia's We Take Care of Our Own, while also connecting it back to what his mother, Sally, said many times and what Tyson repeated about heroes taking care of each other. We take care of our own. We look out for each other. We take care of our home. It was so beautiful. It was so beautiful. Walker conveyed this so well. It motivated me. I'm like, get me a sword. I'll join the battle with you. Not really. I would just try to. That's why I like the idea of charm speak, like talking my way out of things, way more appealing than having to like get my hands dirty. But anyways, the campers cheer. Then we see Bronte and her group of people continuing to try to defend the border, but then the boulders stop. It's quiet for a second, and Luke's crew come charging up the hill. The rogue demigod specifically. Clarice, Chris, Katie, and a few unnamed others are making their way through the woods, and Clarice asks if anyone else from the Ares cabin was hurt, asks about Mark, and then Chris says that he's leading one of the patrols. They have 4 watching the perimeter, and she's like, we need to be watching the tree. And he's like, the barrier's breaking down, and so are we. Some of us are worried that there are enemies in camp, traitors. He doesn't like the way Katie took a shot at Clarice earlier, and he turns to confront Katie, asks to see her bow, and she's like confused. She's like caught off guard by this. He pulls a sword and accuses her of being one of Luke's loyalists. Katie doesn't know what's going on, and in this moment, he yells now, and infighting commences. Some of his people were also traitors, and fighting begins. He smirks at Clarice, and this was so Traitors core. This was so Traitors like the game core, where it's like you're a traitor, so you're deflecting onto somebody else. Like Chris is the traitor, but he's deflecting onto Katie. Which also, side note, now that I'm talking about the traitors, which I will be talking about more in like that's the next podcast episode, but like very brief tangent about the traitors. Okay, I believe it was Lisa Renna. Somebody said that Rob Roush is like, they had trouble pinning him as a traitor, the Faithfuls did, because they couldn't stare at him for too long because he was just so attractive that they would get distracted. And I'm like, child of Aphrodite core, he has an aura of charm that like makes him, he's blinding. I'm like, he would be a child of Aphrodite. He would be a child of Aphrodite. He just would. Everything is connected to me. Okay, that's how my brain works. Okay, that's how my brain works. But anyways, fighting commences. He smirks at Clarice. He's a traitor. And then Chris explains that Luke always had his back, and then tells Clarice to give him the fleece. He'll tell Luke she died well. They fight a bit, but Clarice gets away, and he yells for his people to follow him, and they go after her. Clarice makes her way to camp. She's at the Chariot Arena, and Chris manages to wound her and disarm her. And he grabs the fleece from her. She's on the ground. A bunch of swords are pointed at her. And Chris says her mistake was thinking they were friends. Maybe she forgot she doesn't have those. And just as he's saying that, just as he's calling her a friendless loser, Annabeth and Grover come in a chariot, and Chris's people scatter. Grover grabs the fleece from Chris and tells Clarice to get on board, and they drive away. And I really love this. Clarice was not one of my favorite characters in the book. And I like Clarice significantly more in the show than I do in the book, because I feel like I really appreciate the way, I really like her arc. Like, even this, like, to fail without friends, to fly home alone. I remember it having a similar impact of Percy, like, giving her the fleece and sending her on her way. But it wasn't as impactful to me personally as this was, of like, she expressed having this doubt. There's more vulnerability to Clarice in the show than there is in the books. And I really like this. I really like this moment of Clarice, like, this being a doubt of hers, where she's like, the prophecy was getting to her head and she confided in Percy. He then used it against her and then apologized. And then we see somebody else using this against her, something that she had previously explained was like a doubt that she was having about herself. And then it's proven wrong. Like, she does have friends. She proved herself. Like, I thought this was very beautiful arc for Clarice, and I really like her as a character. Not my favorite character, but I like her a lot more in the show. Like, I feel like I like show Clarice more than I like book Clarice. I feel like I understand her more in the show. Like, I feel like Clarice was just, not that she was one dimensional, but like, I was obviously always, maybe not obviously, but when I read the books, I really resonated with Percy Jackson, the main character. So she was an op, and because she was an op, she was my enemy as well, you know? And not unlike Allison Sims, that didn't mean I wanted her to die. Okay. If she was dying, I would have given her the fleece. I'm better than Allison Sims. But I didn't like her. She didn't resonate with me. And I wasn't moved by her character. And while she's still not my favorite character, her approach to, like, she's still not my favorite character. I still find her frustrating in moments. I am more moved by her story. I'm enjoying watching her more. Like, Clarice in the books, anytime she was there, I was like, oh, I have to read about Clarice. I don't like her. I don't feel that way about show Clarice. Okay. That's just my take. But anyways, Clarice gets on the chariot and they drive away. At the border, Luke and his people are like fighting Bronte and that group that was patrolling the border. Thalia's tree is withering away, like branches are falling off of it. He walks up to the tree, goes to touch it, but wavers. The giants are growling in the background. They charge up the hill, and Luke gives them permission to enter the way that Annabeth did with Tyson in the first or second episode. When they got to camp and Tyson couldn't go through the border because he is technically a monster, Luke does that. Percy yells Luke's name in the distance, and then we see him across the field. Tyson comes up behind him with like a trident. A horn blows. A bunch of campers come. They are ready for battle. They're all like in armor with their weapons, and a fight commences. And this is the moment where Luke did something that genuinely I was like, I hate you. I hate you. It irritated me so much. But even this thing he did that pissed me off so badly, there's like a thought process that I can follow where I'm like, I understand why Luke has a beef with Percy. In a way that I just don't feel with Allison Sims. All that to say, another critique of Allison Sims. Anyways, so they fight, and eventually he and Percy struggle themselves. Percy disarms Luke, and because Luke now doesn't have a weapon, he begins to punch Percy. You're an adult. Why are you literally, like, I understand that, like, they're demigods, they train for battle. This isn't like just regular children, like, it's a battle, so obviously whatever. But there's just something so like personally violent about like punching somebody repeatedly to when they bleed versus like a fight sequence where you're just like, it's battle. Like, it was so like wild to me, and it really, really irritated me. But as much as it irritated me, and I'm like, I hate it. It pissed me off. Luke's vendetta against Percy makes sense to me, right? Luke very clearly has this deep desire to be, like, he has this vendetta against the gods, and he wants to be Kronos' right-hand man. He wants to aid in Kronos rising to power and destroying the gods. And he probably has, on some level, some chip on his shoulder about the fact that the prophecy is about a half-blood of the eldest gods, right? He views Percy as somebody who has this power to do something that maybe he feels like I feel like there's like a connection there, right? Where it's like he probably feels some anger towards Percy because Percy is connected to this prophecy, and it's why he is so loyal to Thalia and thinks that she will be on his side, because he's like, a half-blood of the eldest three will be the one to destroy Olympus, and I know it can be Thalia. I know it can be Thalia. And he doesn't obviously feel that he can do that. Like, so I don't know. I still think it's uncalled for, and it's ridiculous, and it's stupid, and I don't like the fact that he like literally punched a child repeatedly. That was crazy. But I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm not defending him at all, but just like, I understand Luke's beef with Percy. I don't agree with it. I think it's stupid and misguided, but like there's a logic there that I can follow. But anyways, not only does he physically assault Percy repeatedly with his hands, he says he then begins to insult him. He says Percy was never the one, it was always Thalia, and he goes to stab Percy, and Tyson stops him with his trident, like intercepts the sword with his trident, and then knocks Luke back, and he goes flying across the field. That's why I'm a Tyson stan. Annabeth, Grover, and Clarice then ride up in their chariot, and Allison Sims shoots Annabeth with an arrow. Specifically Annabeth. There's 3 people on that chariot. She shoots Annabeth. Yeah, Annabeth was the one driving the chariot. But like, still, she has it. What is your beef with Annabeth? Anyways, they fall off the chariot because Annabeth was driving. And Allison Sims and Luke are low-key perfect together. They should like get married and start like I hate children club, because like, why do you want these children to die? Again, I understand that they're demigods and like, it's not just like you're in a school, okay? But when you think about their ages, Annabeth and Percy are 13, right? Luke and Allison Sims specifically graduated from camp, I believe is the word they use. So she's probably at least 18, right? Okay, she's at least 18. Luke is like 19. So you will have already, like, if you were in school, you would have already graduated high school. Maybe you're starting college. Maybe you already finished 1 year of college. That's how old you are, okay? At the minimum, you're a freshman in college, and you're beefing with a 13-year-old. That's a middle schooler. Like, it's not that if you were in high school, beefing with a middle schooler would be fine, but it's like, you're not even in high school. You're literally, that's wild. Anyways, Percy goes to check on Annabeth, and she says she's okay. Mind you, this happened to my good friend, not really my friend, I don't like Melissa. This happened to my good friend, Melissa Hatch. She also got shot in the shoulder with an arrow. You know what her girlfriend did when that happened, though? She ran out. She ran off. I understand why people are like, Percy Beth, most romantic love story ever, because Percy and Annabeth aren't even dating, and she gets shot with an arrow, and he goes to check on her. Melissa was dating Sean, and she didn't even do that. I'm just kidding, okay? It's not like she left her there to rot. She wanted to chase after the people who shot her girlfriend. Anyways, Annabeth says she's okay. Allison says they need reinforcements. They need to bring the tree down. Annabeth says, I'm okay, just save the tree. And Allison begins to hack the tree with an axe. You could never be Lottie Matthews. You wish you were Lottie Matthews. Also, Lottie Matthews would never destroy a tree, okay? She is one with the tree. She hears the wilderness and it hears her. She would never destroy the tree, especially if the tree was a girl. Like, Thalia's trapped in the tree. Lottie would never, like, you know? The wilderness is a misandrist. And because the wilderness is a misandrist and Lottie is the vehicle with which the wilderness conveys... sorry, not a Yellow Jackets tangent. That means absolutely nothing if you don't watch Yellow Jackets. But Lottie Matthews, very famous for her work with an axe, for those who don't know. She begins to attack the tree with the axe. Percy grabs the fleece, stabs it with a spear, and throws it to Clarice, tells her to finish the quest. She throws it like a javelin, and it hits the tree. The fleece begins to heal the tree, and out of it comes Thalia, and she yells, "Never!" Then lightning comes down and knocks Percy and Thalia out. Just then. Percy then is standing by the water, and Poseidon is there. It's like, he says it's not death or life, and Percy's like, it's a dream. And then Poseidon says he's grown. And Percy says he's tried calling him. Luke's right, isn't he? The war has started. Which, side note, I forgot that Poseidon was British. And like the thing is, I genuinely don't care. Like their accents never bothered me. But there was a lot of discourse on TikTok about Thalia being British. People were really upset that Thalia was British. I don't really think it matters because I don't really think her being American was super important to her story. I don't really care. And so I didn't really care that she was British. But Poseidon being British did catch me off guard because there was so much discourse of like, Thalia's not British. I'm like, that can be explained, okay? Like, again, that's not super important. But Poseidon being British makes less sense to me. This episode for the first time, like when it came out, I had just read a chapter in The Lost Hero where they're in Quebec and they meet the wind god, and the wind god speaks French because that's like that's the main language in this area of Canada. And the gods like speak the language of where they're currently at. They adapt to like the local culture, right? Which is why like Western civilization moved to the United States, which is why the Empire State Building is no longer in like, or I was about to say why the Empire State Building is no longer in Greece. It never was. I mean, why Mount Olympus is now no longer in Greece. It's in the Empire State Building because America is now like the peak of Western civilization and they've like adapted to their times. So like if all that's true, why are you British? I don't see Mount Olympus in the Big Ben. Why are you British? Like I know they're gods and they can have whatever accent they want. And I genuinely wouldn't care except the discourse was just in my head of like Thalia being British. I'm like, Poseidon's British? Aren't you American? I mean, he's a god, so it doesn't really matter. But anyways, back to their conversation. Percy asks if Luke is right. Is the war starting? And Poseidon says, a great stirring has begun. The Titans walk loose from their prison. The war is inevitable. He needs his son by his side. And then he turns and he's looking at Tyson in the distance. He thanks Percy for watching over him. Tyson approaches. He's really glad that Percy's okay. Poseidon tells Tyson that they need his skills to craft weapons for the war to come. And he says yes instantly. And he's like, you can think about it. And he's like, it's the least I could do for Percy. Percy's like, what do you mean? And he's like, a long time ago, when I was on the streets, I prayed for help. I prayed for a friend. And I was sent a brother. This made me tear up. I love Tyson. It really warmed my heart. Tyson says he's going to go get ready or wake up, because they're in a dream. And then he leaves and it's just Percy and Poseidon. Percy says that if Poseidon needs extra help, but he stops him and he's like, your destiny lies elsewhere. Percy's like, the great prophecy, right? And he nods, says he planned to tell him closer to 16, but there isn't an ideal age to carry the burden of deciding the fate of the universe. And Percy asks if that's why he had him, like if he knew of the prophecy and he had him because he knew one of his children would be the one to decide the fate of the universe. And Poseidon says, and I also wrote this down verbatim because I thought it was very moving, there are forces more powerful than the will of the gods, my son. Fate is one of them, love another. And that really warmed my heart. And it feels like a callback to, I don't remember what episode this was, but when they are leaving the sirens, Annabeth asks Percy what he saw with the sirens. And he says that he was just laser focused on her. And she kind of saved him in that regard. And she says that he definitely saved her. And he's like, I guess we both had to be here for it to work out. It's like the kind of fate that doesn't suck. And they like laugh and it's a very sweet moment. And for me, Perciveth has always been like so written in the stars coded. Like they are just so soulmates, like meant to be always like they're just so fated. Like fate is something that really is something that I always think of when I think about Perciveth. Like when people are like, oh, they're rushing Percy and Annabeth, it's too soon. I'm like, Percy and Annabeth, to me, they're not even friends to lovers. They're like, we were always meant to be together. They're like, they surpassed the tropes. They're so much more than that. So like for me, it was never weird or like they're moving too quickly for many reasons I've talked about. I don't think it's like whatever, but this was just so beautiful to me. Fate is one of them, love another. And I don't blame him. I don't blame him for falling in love with Sally. I don't. Poseidon tells Percy to never underestimate himself. And then Percy repeats the word never, the word that Thalia said before they got knocked out, and Percy asks Poseidon if he knows what that means. And then Poseidon says, brace yourself. And Percy wakes up from his dream. Grover's voice says he's awake. Annabeth says she's still out. Percy's like waking up. It's hazy. He turns to see Thalia in a bed next to him. They're in the infirmary. He sits up and asks how long they've been out. And Annabeth says 3 days. Grover says Chiron approved the use of most of the nectar in storage. And Percy's like, Chiron's back. And Annabeth says he was reinstated. He wanted to see you as soon as you woke up. Then Annabeth and Grover exchange a glance. And Percy's like, what? And in unison, they say that he drools in his sleep, which is a nice callback to season 1. They all laugh. Then they walk up to the big house together. Percy says, so we won. Grover says, we survived. The cronies were driven back. Luke vanished. As they walk into the big house, campers are clapping, not for them. Like there's a little group happening, and they, to something Chiron said, then the group disperses. Clarice says that Chiron put her in charge of training their strike force for the fight to come, and tells her group to get started. And then she tells Percy that they could use him too, both of them. She turns to Annabeth, but not you, Grover. And he says he's good. He has his own assignment. Then Percy congratulates Clarice, and it's like awkward, right? It's awkward. They're like okay now, right? They had beef, but they're like okay now. And even this, I like their dynamic more in the show than I did in the books. It's awkward, and he's like, can you just give me a shut up, Jackson? And she does. And then she walks away. Grover, Annabeth, and Percy approach Chiron. They're glad to see him back. Percy says he's glad that Zeus finally came to his senses, and Chiron regrets not having told them his connection to Kronos last summer. He regrets a lot of things. He's always tried to heed the will of the gods and be an example for the demigods he trains and cares for. He can no longer do both. They, Grover and Annabeth, deserve to know what happened, the truth about what happened the night they arrived. We see the opening scene again from this episode, and Annabeth says she remembers it. She doesn't need to relive it. And Chiron says, you weren't there after, though. And he explains what happened after Luke, Annabeth, and Grover went ahead. Chiron saw it all. He was ready to defend Thalia, to help her. But instead of attacking, the Furies just spoke. They spoke until they said too much, and then Zeus struck them down and appeared. We see Thalia and Zeus have an exchange. She says Zeus, and he corrects her father. Chiron's voice, still explaining the story, says that the Furies delivered a message from Hades, meant to drive a wedge between Zeus and Thalia. Thalia says to Zeus, it's too late. She heard what they said already, and he's like, it's all lies. And she's like, they told me that you want me to fight some war for you to fulfill some fake prophecy. And Zeus says, it's real, and you must be on the right side of it. She's like, I thought it was all lies. And he says he's tolerated this rebellious phase long enough, but she's almost 16, a dangerous age, and for a daughter of Zeus, the danger grows worse by the day. This camp is safe. She'd be safe, she'd be protected, but not only would she be safe, she'd be idolized. The other demigods would fight to bask in her glory. And it's just like, you misunderstand your daughter. You misunderstand your daughter. She doesn't care about glory, okay? You should have said that to Luke, okay? She replies, the only demigods I care about are the two I just brought here. I see now that was a mistake, so I'm going to go get them, and we are going to leave. And he says that she will not walk away from him. And she says, hear my words. I don't want to be your daughter. I will never be your weapon. Do you hear me? Never. And she doesn't finish the never, because then she's struck by lightning and turned into a tree. Right? Okay. She was defiant. So she got turned into a tree. And it makes me think of the song, The Origin of Love, from Hedwig and the Angry Inch, where it's like, the gods grew quite scared of our strength and defiance. And Thor said, I'm going to kill them all with my hammer, like I killed the giants. And Zeus said, no, let me use my lightning like scissors, like I cut the whales off the tails off the whales and dinosaurs into lizards, right? Okay. And I'm like, you could just add how I turned Thalia into a tree. I use my lightning like scissors to cut the tail off the whales or whatever, and turn the dinosaurs into lizards, and Thalia into a tree. I love that song. I can't lie. But anyways, back to the present day. After Chiron has explained this story, Grover says that Chiron lied. He saw what happened and he lied. Chiron says that 6 years ago, Zeus ordered him to lie, to say that the Furies mortally wounded Thalia and he spared her life, not that he ended it. Like, what a loser dad. Man, the gods are really bad parents. Like, you're grounded. Her version of being grounded is literally she becomes a tree. She's one with nature. She's literally grounded. Chiron says that as soon as he heard what the quest was about, the quest was to get the fleece, he knew that Kronos intended to use the power of the fleece to raise Thalia, his champion. And Annabeth is like his champion. Chiron says he feared that the champion was Percy, but he was wrong. And Annabeth's like, you don't mean. And then thunder roars. Thalia bursts through the door. There's like a storm outside. There wasn't before when they walked up. Weather was fine, but now it's storming. She asks, where's, and then Annabeth approaches, and she's surprised by how much Annabeth has grown. They hug. She asks where Luke is. There are awkward looks around the room. There's tension. Everybody's like, do we tell her? And then Percy's voiceover. It's like the ending scene for the visual. If you want to know, Percy is like on one side of the room. Thalia is like holding on to Annabeth on the other side, and they're facing off each other, right? Like looking at each other, determined, again, trying to be this like two sides of the same coin, yada, yada, yada. And Percy's voiceover says, you guys get nightmares, right? Not like mine, because mine just woke up. And it was so good. And it was so good. It was a great way to tie into the first episode when we open with Percy's nightmares. I loved this ending. I really like this season. It's really interesting because the Sea of Monsters was never a book that I particularly like loved. Like the third book was always one that stood out to me as like one of my favorites. And I really like 3, 4, 5 are so good, each in their own way. But 3, I think, is one of my favorites. And then I was honestly always kind of partial to the later books. I think just because I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm older now. So I'm like, I resonate more with I love the OG Percy Jackson. But the Sea of Monsters was always probably like one of my least favorite of the books. And I liked this season significantly more than I liked last season. And the Lightning Thief book holds such a special place in my heart. I think, 1, because of the musical, I adore the musical. And 2, because obviously it's the first introduction to Percy Jackson. And I read that first book and I was immediately hooked. So like, obviously it holds a lot of, like, I really, really love the Lightning Thief because of all of those things. And so I was excited for this season, but I didn't think that I would like it as much as I did in comparison to last season. I liked season 1. I enjoyed season 1, but I think a lot of the issues I had were greatly improved. My biggest critique is I think it would do better with more episodes, but that's my big critique of television right now in general. Allison Sims is the one thing that really irritated me because I feel like she does these things and I'm like, but why? Like Allison Sims as a character is one who I find so frustrating and is really, really irritating me. As the season progressed, I'm like, why are you just evil? Why are you evil? There's like, I wish we had gotten some kind of backstory into Allison Sims, but alas, overwhelmingly really love the season. I'm so excited that season 3 comes out this year. Like that's so amazing. This is the last episode of the season, but not of the year. Like I'll be recapping season 3 sometime probably in December, I imagine, like end of the year for sure, but it's still so cool that it's coming out this year. So I really, really, really loved covering this the way I did. Apologies for all the like delays and like I wasn't super up to date of like getting a recap out before the next episode, but I hope you enjoyed my thoughts nonetheless. Once I'm caught up on the Traitors, then I'm going to catch up on the Pit, and then I'll be recapping the Pit and the Traitors until that wraps up. And then from there, I don't really know. I'll probably, in the meantime, start working on some deep dives and put effort into those. I want to get a better camera before I do my Yellow Jackets deep dive, to be honest, but I'll play that by ear. I have a lot that I want to talk about before I get to the deep dives, but thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. Apologies for missing a week. I want to try to get a Traitors episode out this weekend. And so I'm hoping to do that. I'm hoping that there are 2 episodes this week. So me skipping a week doesn't matter, but no promises because this is a hobby. And I think when I get really like I stress myself out and I'm like, I need to get this done by this time. And if I don't then I'm trying to have fun with this. So no promises. I'm hoping to do that, but we'll see. We'll see. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Please like and subscribe. Follow me wherever you listen to podcasts, share with a friend, all that good stuff. Any comments, all of that. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really can't thank you enough. I love this podcast so much, and it means a lot to me when people listen. So thank you if you're one of those people. Hope you have a great week. You'll hear from me either next week or sometime later this week, but next week for sure. Okay. I'm getting back into the weekly podcasting thing for sure, at least. I mean, I say this is really the first week I've skipped in a long time. So it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Anyways, hope you have a great week. You'll hear from me soon about The Traitors season 4. Then I'm going to catch up on The Pitt season 2.